Gold has always had a strange power over humans. It doesn't speak, it doesn't move, yet it convinces people to abandon everything they know: homes, families, safety, even reason itself. The California gold rush was not just a historical event, it was one of the earliest mass experiments in human greed, hope, and risk, a moment when money stopped being an idea and became an obsession. In January 1848, in what was then a quiet and remote territory, a carpenter named James Wilson Marshall was working at a sawmill owned by John Sutter. While inspecting the water flowing through the mill, Marshall noticed something unusual: small, shiny particles resting on the riverbed. At first it seemed insignificant, but when Marshall examined them more closely, he realized what he was looking at: gold. Sutter and Marshall tried to keep the discovery secret. They understood immediately what gold meant: chaos, crowds, loss of control. But secrets don't survive long when money is involved. Whispers spread through nearby settlements, then through California, then across the United States, and soon across the world. By December 5, 1848, the news could no longer be contained. U.S. President James K. Polk stood before Congress and officially confirmed the discovery of rich gold deposits in California. With that single announcement, America changed direction. Newspapers exploded with headlines promising instant wealth on the West Coast. Stories circulated of gold lying openly in rivers, waiting to be picked up by anyone bold enough to travel west. What made the story even more shocking was timing. Just days before the discovery, the United States had purchased California from Mexico for $15 million under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. At the time, it seemed like an expensive gamble. After the discovery of gold, it became one of the most profitable land deals in history. For Mexico, it was a bitter loss. For the United States, it was a financial miracle. And for ordinary people, it was temptation in its purest form. Farmers left their fields, craftsmen abandoned their workshops, former soldiers, laborers, and the unemployed packed their belongings and walked away from their lives. They weren't chasing comfort, they were chasing transformation. The gold rush wasn't just about digging metal from the ground, it was about the promise of becoming someone else overnight. By the early 1850s, more than 250,000 people had moved to California, driven by a single belief that gold could rewrite their destiny. In just 4 years, gold worth nearly $400 million was extracted, the equivalent of $14 billion today. More than 370 tons of gold were mined, exceeding what the whole world had produced in the previous 350 years. On certain days, California's mines yielded up to 50 pounds of gold, more than many regions of the world produced in an entire year. This flood of wealth reshaped the nation. Railroads expanded, cities were born, markets shifted, the balance of economic power moved west. But hidden beneath the glitter was a harsher truth. For every story of sudden wealth, there were countless stories of failure, loss, and regret. Gold created winners, but it created far more losers. And most people heading west had no idea which side of history they would end up on. Because before the gold could be found, it had to be reached. And reaching California was the first test of how much a dream was truly worth. The dream of gold was powerful, but before anyone could touch it, they had to survive the journey. In the mid-19th century, most Americans lived on the East Coast. California was almost mythical, distant, dangerous, and largely unknown. There were no highways, no aeroplanes, no safety nets. Reaching the goldfields meant crossing the world as people knew it. There were only 3 ways to get there. The first route was by sea, sailing all the way around South America. A brutal journey lasting 5 to 8 months. Storms, disease, shipwrecks, and starvation were common. But it had one advantage: no transfers. You stayed on the same ship and hoped it didn't sink. The second route passed through Panama. Travelers sailed to the isthmus, crossed dense jungle on foot or by mule, then boarded another ship to California. It was faster, 1 to 3 months, but far deadlier. Tropical diseases like malaria and yellow fever killed thousands. Historians estimate that around 5,000 people died on the Panama route alone. The third route was overland, across the entire continent by wagon, 4 to 6 months through mountains, deserts, rivers, and uncharted land. Families traveled together, supplies ran out, animals died, people were buried along the trail and left behind. Yet still they came, because the dream of gold made danger feel acceptable, even logical. Many didn't travel alone. They formed groups, pooled money, and shared supplies. Others sold everything they owned to fund the trip. Some arrived already in debt, betting their future on a chance to strike it rich. Not everyone heading west planned to dig for gold. Some saw opportunity elsewhere. Merchants brought tools, food, clothing, and equipment. Others planned transportation businesses, gambling halls, or saloons. The gold rush wasn't just a mining boom, it was the birth of an entire economy built around people chasing wealth. As ships arrived in San Francisco, something strange began to happen. Crews deserted. Sailors abandoned their vessels and ran towards the goldfields. By 1850, 500 ships sat empty in San Francisco Bay. They were later converted into hotels, warehouses, shops, prisons, even brothels. The city itself was built from abandonment. When fortune seekers finally reached California, they found chaos. San Francisco exploded from a village of 1,000 into a city of more than 25,000 in a single year. There were not enough houses, roads, food, or laws. Prices soared. Disorder ruled. Many arrivals had never mined anything in their lives, but belief was stronger than experience. They believed gold was easy. They believed it was waiting. They believed luck would choose them. Some realized quickly that luck alone wasn't enough. Competition was ruthless. The best locations were taken first. Newcomers were forced to search deeper, work harder, and take bigger risks. Groups formed, tools improved, strategies emerged. The goldfields became a living experiment in capitalism. High risk, oversaturation, instability, and extreme inequality. Out of 10 ventures, maybe one survived, and that one could create a fortune. But for most, reality was about to hit hard. Because once the journey ended, the real struggle began, and the gold itself was far more difficult to reach than anyone had imagined.
At first, the gold really was easy. In the early days, it lay openly in riverbeds. Men kneeled in cold water, washing sand through wooden pans. This simple technique was called placer mining. A miner didn't need skill, only hope. A wooden pan that cost $8 in 1848 sold for $50 by mid-1849, not because it was rare, but because desperation drove prices higher every week. But the easy gold didn't last. Within months, riverbeds were emptied. What remained was buried deeper, locked inside rock, hillsides, and mountains, and reaching it required strength, tools, and time. Miners began digging shafts. They used sluices, rockers, and heavy equipment. Later came explosives. By 1852, hydraulic mining appeared, massive jets of water powerful enough to wash entire hills into mud. It produced gold, and it destroyed the land. Miners worked from sunrise to darkness. They stood waist-deep in icy water for hours. Backs broke, hands split open, bodies aged faster than time itself. On average, a miner earned about $16 a day, but averages hide the truth. Many earned nothing. Some worked for weeks without finding even a dollar's worth of gold. Living conditions were brutal. Most lived in tents, mud huts, or under open skies. Food was basic and repetitive: beans, pork, cornmeal. Disease spread quickly. Injuries went untreated. Winter nights were merciless. Law barely existed. There were few police officers. Disputes were settled with fists or pistols. Vigilante groups formed, judging and executing suspects without trials. According to some estimates, more than 4,200 murders occurred during the first 5 years of the gold rush. For comparison, during the same period, New York City recorded only about 120 murders. Prices became absurd. A pound of coffee cost $5 when the average daily wage in the East was $1. Eggs sold for $1 each. Boots cost $100. A simple frying pan could sell for $15. Meanwhile, merchants thrived. One man, James Sam Brannan, sold sandwiches to miners in exchange for specks of gold. From a simple food stand, he earned up to $5,000 a day. He didn't dig for gold, he sold survival. Saloons multiplied everywhere. Alcohol became escape. By 1850, San Francisco, with a population of just 25,000, had more than 500 drinking establishments. Many miners lost more than money. They lost health, they lost hope. Some lost their lives by their own hands. Statistics suggest that around 80% of gold seekers either found nothing or spent more surviving than they earned. The gold rush became a test of endurance, physical, mental, and emotional. Yet even amid misery, competition intensified. Miners began thinking like entrepreneurs. They formed teams, invested in better tools, searched unexplored territories. Mining started to resemble a modern startup market, high risk, overcrowded, unstable, but capable of producing extreme winners. Out of countless failures, a few extraordinary successes emerged. But as many would soon discover, the people who truly became rich were often not the ones holding the shovel. They were the ones watching the crowd and selling to it.
As the years passed, a harsh truth became impossible to ignore. Most of the real money was not made in the mines, it was made around them. While thousands chased shiny particles in freezing rivers, a smaller group watched carefully. They studied what the gold seekers truly needed: food, tools, clothes, land, transport, banking, and communication. These people didn't gamble on luck, they built systems. James Sam Brannan, who never mined a single ounce of gold, became California's first millionaire by selling supplies. He famously ran through San Francisco holding a bottle of gold dust, shouting about riches, while quietly buying every shovel and pan in the region ahead of time. Levi Strauss arrived selling fabric. He noticed miners needed durable clothing. Using canvas from wagon covers, he created reinforced work pants. In 1873, he patented jeans with copper rivets. Today, the world still wears what the gold rush invented. Henry Wells and William Fargo didn't dig either. They moved gold, mail, and valuables. Their company, Wells Fargo, became one of America's most powerful financial institutions. Railroads, meat suppliers, land speculators, bankers, and transport companies earned steadily, safely, and repeatedly, while miners risked everything for a chance. Land speculation reached insane levels. Plots selling for $16 before the rush were worth $45,000 a year later. Entire districts of San Francisco were bought for pennies and sold for fortunes. One investor turned $100 into $1.5 million within a few years. Ironically, the men who started it all lost everything. John Sutter, on whose land gold was discovered, saw his farms destroyed by crowds. He spent years fighting in court and died poor in 1880. Levi Strauss, the man who first spotted the gold, never became rich. He worked as a carpenter until his death. Gold did not reward fairness, it rewarded position. For Native Americans, the gold rush was catastrophic. Their population in California fell from 150,000 to less than 30,000 by 1870. Entire communities were erased as mining expanded. And yet, despite the suffering, California was transformed forever. By the late 1850s, its population exceeded 380,000 compared to just 15,000 before the rush. From a remote frontier, it became one of the richest and most influential regions in the world. But perhaps the most valuable legacy of the gold rush wasn't gold at all. It was mindset. California became a place where people risked everything for opportunity, where failure was common but ambition was unstoppable. That same spirit later gave rise to Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and the global technology industry. The pioneers never stopped coming, only the gold changed. Today, it's not buried in rivers, it's hidden in ideas, data, algorithms, and innovation. The lesson of the gold rush still echoes loudly. In every mass craze, don't look for what brings fast profit, look for what creates lasting value. Sometimes the first ones lose, sometimes the lucky ones fade, but those who understand the system and serve it build wealth that lasts. California's golden past didn't disappear, it evolved, and it all began with a few shining particles in cold water on a January morning in 1848.